Hey guys, you're going to be watching this video on fascist aggression in Europe before World War II actually began. We're going to be looking at British and French appeasement of Germany and why the Soviets and Germany made a peace pact. All right. Now, as we go through this, you have a worksheet to do, so make sure that you're filling it out. If you need to pause it, you should be able to pause it, yada, yada, yada. All right. Okay, so we talked in class about this fella, Mussolini in Italy, also known as Il Duce. All right, that's this guy right here. In March, or excuse me, in 1922, about 30,000 of him and his black shirts marched into Italy and took it over. All right. Some of the things, this is a question on your worksheet, that he did immediately is he abolished democracy. He outlawed all political parties, but his own party, which was the Fascist Party. He imposed censorship, so that would be censorship on, so you don't have freedom of speech, freedom of the press, all of that stuff. He had opponents jailed. He outlawed strikes. He made allies with rich industrialists. He was inspired Hitler was inspired by Mussolini's march on Rome. Hitler and the Nazis plotted to overthrow the government and seize power in Munich, Germany. And in German, that's München. And that was in November of 1923. That was a failed attempt when they tried to overthrow the German government. And when they did that, Hitler was about 3 or 4 feet away from getting shot and killed. So had it actually killed the person next to him on the march to try to overthrow the government. And had he been hit, world history might be totally, totally different. All right. While he's in prison, we talked about the book that he wrote in class called Mein Kampf, basically spelled out all of Germany's or all of Hitler's what he wanted to do. The Aryan race, Lebensraum, all of that stuff. What Hitler wanted to do was gain control of every aspect of German life, okay? And how he did that is he shaped opinion through propaganda. And if you take a look at some of this, and we'll take a look at both American and German propaganda during World War II in class, but they got rid of any books that could have possibly contradicted what the Nazis stood for. So again, freedom of speech was really affected in all these fascist countries. And if you remember from that other video that we watched, if we look at that graph of the of government. So on the far right, you have 100% government, where government is in control of, on the far right was 0% government. And that was where anarchy, okay? So there's no government whatsoever. And then on the far left, you had communism, socialism, fascism, all of those things on the far left that would be 100% government. And that's really what a totalitarian government does. And that's what these guys did, is they set up totalitarian governments where every aspect of their governments were or every aspect of life was controlled by the government. And they used propaganda. So here you have Joseph Goebbels was his minister of propaganda, and they raided all the libraries, they gathered books, anything that went against Germany, they banned. All right, and then if you resisted, well, not a good thing. And we looked at what happened to that fella. I can't remember his name offhand in the first PowerPoint I gave you, but we looked at that video and you saw what happened to him. All right. So, who did they blame all their problems on, Germany? The Jews. Okay. And that was a huge part of Nazi ideology was anti-Semitism, the hatred of Jews, and they passed the Nuremberg laws, and that was in 1933, and that basically deprived Jews of all their rights, any civil rights that they had. They were first put into ghettos, and then from then on, and we'll talk more about what actually happens, exterminating. That was the goal, was exterminating the entire Jewish people. All right, it wasn't just Jews; it was communists. It was, which is ironic because fascism and communism are both socialist, and but anybody that could have possibly been against Hitler's government. And you had the Night of Broken Glass. Nazi groups attacked Jews in their homes, their businesses. That took place in 1938. I believe a German ambassador was killed in France, assassinated in France, and they used that as a reason to bust down on any Jewish businesses, synagogues. That's where the Jews would worship. Any of that stuff. Okay. And when I talk about who the Nazis didn't like, I mentioned the Jews, Jehovah's Witnesses, gypsies, homosexuals, anybody that was seen as less than human. And that's what these Nazis did. Okay, so here's a picture of a Jewish synagogue on fire. And you can see that every Jew then had to wear the Star of David. All right, and that identified themselves as a Jew. All right. All right. Now, meanwhile, in Japan, there's serious stuff going on over there. You had a Emperor Hirohito, and the Japanese people actually believed that Hirohito was almost godlike. Okay, he was. It was almost like a divine. He was holy, and he was more of a puppet than anything else because he was controlled by the military elite, the military establishment in Japan, and they wanted to go to war with China in Manchuria, and the reason they wanted to go take over Manchuria was to get their oil. All right, and in 1931 they invaded Manchuria. All right. 1935, Mussolini invaded Ethiopia. Again, we talked about this already in class. Mussolini wanted to create an Italian colonial empire in Africa. League of Nations did nothing. Okay? And the reason that these guys didn't do anything is they didn't want war. Even though all these groups were begging for help from the League of Nations, from Britain, from France, to come in and help them. They didn't do it because they wanted to avoid war. Even though they were all about peace, they didn't do anything. So if you're an aggressive person and somebody, you get what you want, you just keep going until finally somebody's going to get fed up, and eventually that will happen. But who knows if they just stood up to these fascist aggressive countries beforehand, if maybe things would have been a little bit different. All right. Now, in the United States at this time, the U.S. actually passed the first of 3 neutrality acts. We did not want to get involved in a European war again like we had during World War I. And actually FDR was a very a lot of the programs that he had instituted during the Great Depression. He was a big government kind of guy, and he actually looked at what Mussolini was doing in Italy, some of the government policies and things like that, and there was a mutual admiration between Hitler, Mussolini, and FDR on how they ran total government. And your history book doesn't usually talk about that. And It's just kind of interesting. Okay. So Britain and France chose appeasement. Okay. And again, the reason they guys wanted to do this is because, well, they didn't want to go to war. All right. So it encouraged Japan, Italy, and Germany to keep taking more. Okay. It's that old saying, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. All right. If you bust down hard on somebody, they're probably not going to try to do something again. All right. But if I say, oh, it's okay, you can do that. Um, you know, oh, you took 2 of my candy bars. It's okay. Please don't do it again. Well, then you take a third and a fourth, and finally I'm going to get mad. All right. Actually, I would get mad at the first candy bar you took from me because don't take my food. All right. So, in 1936, Italy and Germany signed the Rome-Berlin Axis. Okay. So Germany, or Hitler and Mussolini sign an agreement, and then later on they become known as the Axis powers once Japan joins them. Okay. Uh, all right, I ran into a little technological glitch right there, so I'm hoping that everything is recorded from beforehand. But in 1935, Hitler figured he would just break the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, he started rebuilding Germany's military. League of Nations did nothing. Oh, hey, we'll just please don't do anything further. Okay. Then he moved the troops into the Rhineland, and the Rhineland is an area between Germany and France. Okay. And again, they appeased him. So this strengthens his power among Germans because they see him as this strong leader. All right. And it encouraged Hitler to keep on building up his military and expanding it. Okay. And then they even went in 1936 and helped Spain. Francisco Franco, another fascist, overthrow the Spanish monarchy. All right, and when they did this, they actually what he did is he showed his blitz. We'll talk more about this in class, but blitzkrieg, which was lightning war. You'd have dive bombers, German dive bombers, come down and attack, and then you'd have the infantry and tanks moving in, and it was just an amazing show of power that the Germans had, and should have given other countries a big preview of what was to come. Okay, so here you can see this is Francisco Franco right here. And again, they end up helping him overthrow everything. All right, so in 1937, Japan openly invades China. And the big results of this, the Chinese retreated. They set up a new capital in southern China. Some Chinese guerrilla fighters continued to fight in the northern occupied area. But when the Japanese military took over, they killed tens of thousands of captured soldiers and civilians in Nanking. They actually, the name that reporters and the press called it at the time was the Rape of Nanking. Because when they took over, and some of these photos are very, very difficult to watch or to look at, they killed anybody. There's stories of women being pregnant women being bayoneted in the belly, killing them and the fetus, taking little babies, throwing them up in the air, killing them. These are mass graves that were found. You can see the dead bodies. Here's a Japanese soldier killing a Chinese civilian. One of the things too that there's a story in the press. There's a story in the press that that said 2 Japanese generals had a contest to see, they lined up 100 prisoners each to see who could behead the prisoners faster. Okay, so it was a horrible, horrible atrocities that were committed by the Japanese on the Chinese people. This story right here, to give you an idea, this is an eyewitness account. And again, you can pause any of these deals so you can see the entire. Because if I'm going too fast, I just like to add a little bit of information. And again, make sure you're filling out that worksheet. So if you need to pause it, do that. On December 16th, I went to the streets. Smoke and fire flames had not yet been extinguished. The number of the dead bodies of my countrymen was terrifyingly large, especially there were many corpses of women. 8 of 10 of them had their abdomens being cut open, intestines squeezed out. There were several mothers died together with their fetuses covered by blood. The breasts of these female bodies were either cut off or bayoneted into a mixture of flesh and blood. So this was actually by an eyewitness there. So the horrible, horrible things that were done. Okay, here's a Japanese soldier smiling. These atrocities that are committed in war, it's scary. Okay. Okay, guys, I'm not sure, another technological glitch here. This is the first time I've ever done this, so hopefully everything's still recording. Sorry about that. So here we have, I'm not going to write anything on it. You have Germany right in the middle. You can see it. In the yellow, dark yellow is the Sudetenland, which is a part of Czechoslovakia, the western part, that Germany lost because of the Treaty of Versailles. They lost a lot of land at the end of World War I. That was part of it. There were a lot of German speakers in that part of Czechoslovakia. Okay, and then below it was, in the pink, was the country of Austria. And Austria and Germany actually share a lot of cultural values, and they were a lot alike. So what Hitler and Goebbels are going to do is they are going to use propaganda to get people on their side. And by the way, if I didn't explain what propaganda is you're trying to persuade somebody to think a certain way about something. Okay, a lot of times you might exaggerate the truth or outright lie, and that's what they did. They outright lied about a lot of things that were happening. Okay, so we see propaganda all the time. Commercials. I know if I buy a pair of jeans, they want me to think that I'm gonna look like those good-looking people in the deal, but I know I'm still going to be 5-0 and 200 and way too much, and I'm not gonna get any prettier, no matter what happens. Okay, however, and we see it with the media today. The media is very biased. I mean, they don't even hide it anymore on what they think. Don't even get me started on that. All right, because I want you to think for yourselves. So think about this stuff. All right, so Anschluss. This was the Germany wanted to add, basically annex Austria, the joining together of Germany and Austria. Okay, and what Hitler and Goebbels end up doing is they say the German people are being treated terrible in Austria. They're being treated terrible in the Sudetenland and Czechoslovakia. We need to rescue them. We need to come in there and we gotta save our people. Well, the German people are gonna be like, yeah, they're fellow Germans, right? We want to make sure that they're okay. All right, and one of the arguments was Lebensraum. We need additional living space for our German speakers, for our German people. So we need to add on territory. The heck with the people we're going to take over. We're going to add this area. Okay, so they used all these different things, and again, a lot of Austrians actually supported that. So in 1938, Hitler sent his army into Austria. No resistance whatsoever. and took it over. No bloodshed. Okay. France and Belgium, who had an alliance with Austria, didn't do a thing. League of Nations didn't do a thing. Okay. So here you can see Hitler's car coming through Vienna, the capital of Austria. All right. And immediately after the Anschluss, the Nazis started a brutal crackdown on the Jews there. They arrested them. They publicly humiliated them. Made them scrub the ground. Sometimes they might have had really long beards. They would have had to scrub them with they would cut their hair, and they'd scrub the pavement just to embarrass them. All right. Now, Hitler also wanted, like I said earlier, that area of Czechoslovakia called the Sudetenland. All right. Czechoslovakia had a treaty with France and Britain, okay? And it was that western border of the Sudetenland. There were 3 million people, German-speaking people there, all right? And it was the Czechs' main defense against Germany. In September 1938, Hitler demanded the Sudetenland be given to him. The Czechs said, no, we're not going to give it up. So they looked to France and Britain, who were a lot stronger countries, for help because they had an agreement. And they proposed a meeting in Munich, Germany. And this was called the Munich Conference, all right? It was also known as the policy of appeasement, okay? And if you think about appeasing something, all right, you're giving in to something to avoid future problems. Again, they gave in to them to avoid war. And if you think, the best example I can think of if you've ever been at a grocery store and you've seen a young parent and they got their little kid and their little kid's like, hey, can I get a candy bar? And they say, no, you don't want that candy bar. You can't have that candy bar right now. And the little kid starts throwing a tantrum, right? We've all seen it. I believe my daughter has done that before. And sometimes, what does the parent do? They say, oh, I just don't want to deal with this. There's all these people here. I don't want it's embarrassing. My kid's screaming. So they buy them the candy bar. Well, guess what happens? The next time they go to the grocery store, kid does the same thing. They got what they wanted by throwing that tantrum. Well, it's kind of a similar thing here. They appeased him. They gave in to an aggressor to avoid a problem. All right? In this case, to avoid war. All right? So, again, you give an inch, it's going to take a mile. This guy right here is Neville Chamberlain. He came back a hero to the British, and he said, "We have achieved peace in our time." Well, that peace is not going to last very long. All right. So there he is again. Peace for our time. Within a year, though, the continent would be at war. Now, I've always criticized Neville Chamberlain on that. I have read recently that had he gone to war at the time, Britain was not ready, so who knows? There was one fella out there. So here you see the Czechoslovakians giving the Nazi salute, Heil Hitler. Sudeten Germans are excited about it because these are they're going to be part of Germany again, but the Czechoslovakians that lived there did not like it. And you had most people do believe that Munich Agreement is shameful. They should have never done it. And there was one member of Congress, Parliament and there might have been more, but there was one outspoken dude. And his name, my main man, one of my favorite guys in history, Winston Churchill. He would later become the prime minister, and he's got a lot of great quotes, but he said, "You have chosen between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor. You shall have war." All right? And really, really is telling, okay? Because that's exactly what happens. All right? Now, in 1939, this is the last slide. We are almost done. Stalin makes an agreement. Stalin and the Soviet Union actually make an agreement together. And the reason they make this agreement is that it's called the Non-Aggression Pact. They don't want to have war. Soviet Union doesn't want to have war either. So they decide that they were going to split up the country of Poland, and that is the area right in here. Okay, right to the east of Germany, and right to the west of the USSR, or the Soviet Union. Okay, that's this country right here, and they would divide it up. So Soviet Union would take the eastern part, Germany would take the western part. So they would have a little bit of a buffer zone, all right? And a buffer zone is when you have that little area between you and something or somebody else, and neither is supposed to go on that side. I remember, when my buddies and I, if we'd ever go to a movie back in high school, when you could still go to movies, but you'd always have that seat in between you, and because you wanted that buffer zone. So on September 1st, 1939, Germany invades Poland, and that is actually the start of World War II. That is when Britain and France finally say we've had enough. Now, had they done something earlier instead of appeasing, who knows if world history would have been different, okay? However, and then a few days later, the Soviets end up going in and occupying the rest of Poland. And Poland, they do the same thing that they did in Austria to the Jews. They round them up. They put them in separate areas in the ghettos, and then they later take them to concentration camps. But again, we'll discuss that more in class. I hope you guys enjoyed this. It was kind of long. I apologize for that. I stole this PowerPoint from somebody else because that's what people do. They steal things and work smarter, not harder. That's what they say. But I did add a lot. I did add a few things to the PowerPoint and the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And make sure you fill that worksheet in. You watch the video on Hitler, and check out the WWII PowerPoints as well. Have a great day.